What is up, party people? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Jamila. This is JemilaBeReadin because I do be reading, and we're just gonna hop to my August wrap up. Okay, I read 13 books. It was a really good reading month for me. Starting with a book that I read exclusively to and from Amsterdam on the plane. Nobody's Princess by Erica Ridley. This was kindly gifted to me by the publisher Forever Publishing. This is the third book in what I think is called the Winchester Sibling series. I haven't read the other two, but I'm definitely interested in checking those out. And I'm also not really someone that picks up a lot of historical romances, so I wasn't really sure what to expect with this, but I really enjoyed it. I'd say I'd probably give this one like a 3.75 stars out of 5. This is following Graham Winchester, who is kind of like the person who collects a lot of intelligence in his family. So his family are like, they're kind of like this group of people that helps other people. That's like a really weird description. His family, like, they go on missions to like help people basically, and he's kind of like the spy master type in his family. He has like a whole like connection of people where he gets information. He ends up getting information that makes it seem like he needs to go rescue a princess, but it turns out it's just our other protagonist, Cooney, who is like a high-ranking person in her home country. It's a made-up country that's like Dutch adjacent. They run into each other. Turns out she's not a princess, whatever, but she is here in London on her own mission of sorts because she wants to become a guardswoman, but women don't usually become guards people in her home country. So she's like here trying to get information about London and about the UK to bring back to her home country to kind of prove herself. Anyways, it's a bit of a convoluted setup. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, we kind of just watch them. It feels a bit more slice of life than I'm making it sound. I really liked the found family aspect of this book. I really loved all the other side characters and how they interacted with Cooney. It is dual POV, although I'd say like 80% of the book is from Cooney's perspective. And yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed this one. I do think that the actual like romance aspect of it was a bit lacking. There wasn't a lot of like development, although I do think that Cooney and Graham did have chemistry. It just we spent a lot more time on Cooney's personal journey, which I didn't mind, but that also meant that we didn't get a lot of the like romantic development. So that's that. A book that I started in July and then kind of set aside and then picked back up in August was The Lake of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is my first Le Guin that I've read, and it definitely will not be my last. This book just had a way of like burrowing itself inside my brain, and I have not stopped thinking about it. This is a dystopian sci-fi following a man, what's his name? George, who has the ability to alter reality through his dreams. And he, at the start of this book, is in a really bad situation. He hasn't been sleeping. He's been trying to take drugs to keep himself awake and not dream because he's unable to like control his own power. So he'll like wake up and then something has changed. And so he ends up being sent to a psychiatrist, Dr. William Haber, who ends up finding out about this ability and ends up kind of using George and this power for his own kind of nefarious means. There is a lot of like really interesting like discussion and exploration of like morality in this book, especially like I said, it is a dystopian. So we're in Portland, but like in the future after there's been a ton of war and environmental disasters and a plague, and it was definitely a trip reading this book right now as, you know, we're going through climate change and disasters and a pandemic. Anyways, this was just really good. Ursula K. Le Guin is a master at writing, and I'm definitely excited to check out more of her books. Then I picked up a book. I saw I saw the intro sentence or paragraph of this book on Twitter, and I was like, let me check this out. Black Sheep by Bryn Weaver. This is a dark romance that you can find on Kindle Unlimited. It is an interesting one. I think I did enjoy it. It wasn't like my perfect romance book, but I did enjoy it. Especially, I'm still not sure if dark romance is the subgenre for me, but I did enjoy this for the most part. We're following Bria Brooks, who is a serial killer. She is kind of hunting down people associated with this cult and taking them out, and she's trying to take down the main dude. She's had her own experiences with cults in the past, and it's kind of set her on her journey. There's also Dr. Elijah Kaplan, who is he's a professor at a university. I think his area of specialty is profiling, criminal profiling. He is also trying to take down this cult, but like through working with the FBI, and they kind of run into each other, kind of come across each other because Bria is also a PhD student at this school. All this stuff. Okay, a romance develops, obviously. There's a lot of explicit sex scenes. So if you're someone that doesn't like a lot of smut in their romance, be warned. There's also a lot of like darker themes in here. Obviously, we're talking about serial killers, cults, abuse, that kind of stuff. So, and as always, you can find booktriggerwarnings.com and Storygraph in my description, so you can check out content warnings for all of these books. But yeah, it was a good time. It was very readable. I enjoyed both of the characters for the most part and their interactions. I don't really have a lot to say because it was a little bit forgettable. I don't really remember much, but yeah, good time. If you're looking for a dark romance, check this one out. Then, like literally everyone else, I listened to the audiobook for I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. This is her memoir about her life and her time as like a child star on iCarly and Sam and Cat and that kind of stuff. So it was a lot. I listened to it all in one day. It was a 6-hour audiobook, but I listened to it on double the speed. So I listened to it in like over the course of 3 hours. And I do regret that a little bit because, like I said, it was a very intense and harrowing read. I literally just wanted to give Jennette McCurdy a hug after listening to the audiobook. Yeah, and I just want to like very, very explicitly warn y'all who haven't read this book already that Jennette McCurdy goes very deeply and in detail about her eating disorder. So if that's something that is going to be triggering for you or maybe like hurt your recovery process, I really want to warn you to like maybe stay away from this book for now. But yeah, it's clear that Jennette McCurdy has a passion and talent for writing, and I really hope that's something that she continues to do in the future, whether or not it's like for public consumption. But yeah, loved it. Loved it is a weird term. I didn't love the process of reading it, but I did enjoy the book. Anyways, then I read The Bruising of Kilauea. This is an arc that was sent to me by the publisher, but I believe the book is out now if you wanted to check it out. This is an adult speculative fiction novella debut. And I'm just going to read the back of the book because I have a hard time explaining what this book is about. So, in this intricately layered debut fantasy, a non-binary refugee practitioner of blood magic discovers a strange disease causing political rifts in their new homeland. Persian-American author Nassim Jamnia has crafted a gripping narrative with moving, nuanced exploration of immigration, gender, healing, and family. Powerful and fascinating, The Bruising of Kilauea is the newest arrival in the era of fantasy classics such as the Broken Earth trilogy, The Four Profound Weaves, and Who Fears Death. That is quite quite the books to be compared to. I don't know that it necessarily lives up to those other books, but it is a really interesting idea and a really interesting world. What I really liked is how like openly and acceptedly queer this world was. There was a lot of use of neo-pronouns as well. And so that was really cool to read. And I think just like politics-wise, world-building-wise, magic-wise, all of it was really interesting and the foundation was there, but I just wanted more out of everything. Like, I feel like this had the potential to be amongst these greats that it listed on the back of this book. But I think it would have maybe benefited from being a full-length novel. And I don't know if maybe the author is going to be writing more in this world or kind of like continuing on with the series, if it is a series. But yeah, I think it was just there. Like, I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the world and the magic and the politics, but there just wasn't enough. Like, it felt like we just started to touch on it, especially towards the end of the book. I also feel like the reveal on who was behind the mysterious plague that the main character is trying to figure out, I kind of saw that coming. So it wasn't, I mean, it's not like a mystery book, but it wasn't like hard to figure out, I feel like. But anyways, it was still a good time. If you're interested in checking it out, like I said, it is out now. It's also like pretty short. So yeah, I was really on a nonfiction kick this month, which you'll figure out. But I picked up Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. This is, again, a nonfiction work about asexuality, and it touches a little bit on aromanticism as well. But Angela talks a little bit about her own personal experience with asexuality throughout the book, but she also interviewed a lot of other people who are on the ace spectrum and talked to them about like their relationships and their approaches to relationships and sex and all that other stuff. And I just thought it was so good. And I honestly think that this should be required reading for everyone, even regardless of if they are ace or not, just because there's so much to learn here and discover about your own self as well. And just like as a society, how there is a lot of emphasis on sex. So good stuff. Then I read Continuum by Danielle Allen. This is another romance novella. A lot of my mutuals on Book Talk have been talking about this book so much over the last like 6 months to a year, and I finally got around to picking it up. This is like a second chance romance. So we get like a little bit from the college years. We have Kwame and Aisha, and Aisha was Kwame's tutor in college. She had a crush on him, but he was like kind of in a relationship with someone else and all this stuff. So kind of they ended up graduating and leaving with things kind of like unspoken between the two of them. And then they run into each other 10 years later and they spend a weekend together. And yeah, that's basically it. I thought it was a really good time. It wasn't like a new favorite romance necessarily. I think it was just a little bit too short. I kind of wish it was like a full length romance book, but Danielle did what she needed to do with this one. Also, it is very smutty. So again, warning. Then I finally finished my Hunger Games trilogy reread this summer with Mockingjay. 5 out of 5. I'm just so re-impressed with this series now, especially reading it as an adult. I recall having very mixed feelings about this last book when I first read it, when I was like, gosh, I had to have been like 15 maybe. I remember not liking how it ended, but I liked it. now that I'm older and have more critical thinking skills. I think I wrote about this in an Instagram post where I talked a little bit about my thoughts overall about the series. And I guess spoiler warning, I don't know. Like, this book has been out for a very long time now. But I think one of my biggest issues is that I wanted Katniss to not end up with anyone. I think I just like kind of misunderstood her ideas about marriage and having children, and it wasn't so much that she was making the choice to never get married or have children, because she talks about that in the first book. She isn't making that choice willingly. I mean, she is. She makes that choice, but only because she knows that marriage and partnership almost always leads to children, and she doesn't want to have children because she doesn't want her children to go through the Hunger Games. And so she's kind of written off children and relationships to begin with. And so she never really had like a meaningful choice in the matter. And now that she does, it like makes sense that she would have ended up wanting kids. I mean, it would have also been fine if she decided not to have kids as well. But like, I think in my head, I was like, oh, like this is such a cop out. Like, why didn't like, she should have just stuck to her guns. But I understand now that, like, sticking to her guns, like, it wasn't, like, a meaningful choice that she even had to begin with. But anyways, that was a weird rambling. I loved it. Do you think I should read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? I tried when it first came out, and I don't know. But now the movie's coming out, so I don't know. Then another nonfiction book that I picked up on audio, Belly of the Beast, The Politics of Anti-Fatness as Anti-Blackness by Deshawn Harrison. I've been meaning to read this for a while now. I'd been following Deshawn on Twitter for a very long time before they even, like, announced that they were gonna be writing this book. And I really enjoyed it. Again, another book that I think everyone should read. What I particularly liked about this book is that it focused on talking about fat phobia that is experienced by Black men and Black people who were assigned male at birth. I just really like that because I feel like often the conversation around fat phobia and, like, body positivity and all that stuff tends to be focused from, like, a woman's perspective. And so I really liked that we got a different kind of perspective because obviously everyone experiences fat phobia, although it does play differently into it. And I really like that Deshawn goes into that and also interviews and, like, gets the thoughts from other people as well who have experienced fat phobia. Then I picked up The Blood Trials by N.E. Davenport. This is the first book in a sci-fi fantasy debut. It's a duology. I think the final book is coming out, I want to say early next year, but I'm actually not sure. This is supposedly an adult sci-fi fantasy, but, you know, okay. Let me start off by saying that this was very solidly a 3-star read. I don't have, like, any beef with this book. Like, it was fine, and I will be reading the final book. But I did see this review on Goodreads that said that this book reads like a YA that is masquerading as an adult book by being edgy. And I feel like, although I feel like that was maybe a little too much, I do agree. I feel like that is an apt description about tonally how this book felt. So we are following Ikenna, our protagonist, who is basically trying to figure out who murdered her grandfather, who was the former Legatus commander. Basically, he was this man who kind of, like, saved Marine, the country that she's living in currently. She is not Marinese herself, although she, like, I think was born there and grew up there. And she's also Black, and the people in Marine are not. So she faces a lot of racism and discrimination. So did her grandfather. He trained her in skills, and she's was supposed to join the Praetorian Guard or whatever, and she initially is not going to because she's just kind of going through it after her grandfather dies. And then she realizes that he was murdered, and so the only way to, like, get access to a lot of information is to become a guard. So then she goes through the trials to become a Praetorian Guard, and we're following most of this book is her going through the trials, and then some of it side stuff, like trying to figure out what happened to her grandfather and all that stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the world building was kind of lacking. I didn't really quite understand the politics of this book and, like, how the magic works. Like, I just feel like I'm missing some information here. And it's not like it was, like, difficult to grasp, but, like, when you just kind of think about it, it just doesn't feel like a fully fleshed out world. And on top of that, like, this book was trying to, like, make a lot of commentary on racism and misogyny and just discrimination, but it felt so on the nose, which is not to say that those things don't happen blatantly, because they do. But I just feel like when I'm reading an adult speculative fiction work that's dealing with these themes, I'm just expecting more nuance, and everything was so incredibly on the nose, and it I just expected more out of this. And again, a lot of this tonally feels very young. Ikenna and many of her peers are quite young. I think they're only 19, and some of them are only a little bit older. And just, like, trope wise, yeah, you know, I just feel like she was making a lot of hot-headed decisions, and I get it. I'm just kind of tired of that character in books, you know? Like, I feel like she could have utilized her anger better, but I don't know. It is what it is. It's fine. I don't want to discourage anyone from reading this. I actually feel like if you're someone who reads a lot of YA fantasy and you're looking to transition to adult fantasy, I think this would be a good book for you to pick up. Yeah, I just felt like this felt like a good first draft, but like it needed more like conceptual editing. Also, there is a very, very random, out of pocket, out of nowhere sex scene in the middle of this book. And I was like, why? Where did this come from? It made no sense. The romantic relationship in this, it doesn't make any sense to me. It came out of nowhere. There's like no development. That's not the point of the book. And yet it just came out of it. Just like, I cannot even tell you how much I was like cringing. Like, it took me like a solid 15 minutes just to get through 3 pages of that scene, because I was just like, this is so cringe. Anyways, that's that. Then I read volumes 5 and 6 of Miss Marvel. I'm continuing to really enjoy this series. I think volume 6 is actually my favorite of the series so far. It's like the only one that I've given 5 stars. And I'm just excited to finish off this J. Willow Wilson run. So, yeah. And then lastly, I read The Intersectional Environmentalists: How to Dismantle Systems of Oppression to Protect People and the Planet by Leah Thomas. I read this for my local book club and I enjoyed it. It's a very pretty book. I have some tabs here, but I will say I thought it was just maybe a little bit basic. I think if you're someone who is new to the concepts of intersectionality and environmental justice, then I think this would be a really good primer for you. I just feel like I wish the author went in a little bit deeper on some of the stuff in here, but overall I think it was a good read, and there's like a whole toolkit in the back with a bunch of resources, which I think is really awesome. What to read, different groups that you can look into, like a Q&A, and then there's also all of the bibliography, the citations of like all the stuff that she's pulling from too. So I think this is a great place to start, and it has a ton of resources on where to go next. So again, if you're someone who's wanting to learn more about environmental justice, absolutely check this out. All right, those are all the books that I read in August. I'm looking forward to seeing what September brings me. I'm ready for more fantasy, more horror, more spooky fall vibes. Even though it's still hot here, I'm just gonna pretend that it's fall in my head. So, see ya.